system asks people with diabetes to pay billions upon billions of dollars more than they should, and then the money is spread around on the back end. Insulin, there are 10 drugs that drive the almost $100 billion rebate game in pharmaceuticals. Number one is Humira, but number two and number three are fast-acting and long-acting insulin. What that means is diabetics are paying way more than they should at the pharmacy counter. That money is then spread around to a whole bunch of people on the back end. And what Civica intends to do is we will not play that game. When we manufacture insulin, we're going to put it on the market at a wholesale price that only reflects how much we need to actually continue to manufacture. That's it. We don't have any shareholders to pay off. We don't have any returns to generate for a subset of people. It's a nonprofit company that nobody owns. Intermountain Healthcare, for example, we started it. We will not make a penny off of Civica. When we go to the retail market, we're doing something that no other drug company has ever done before, and that is publish on our packaging what a fair price should be. Just like you have a manufacturer suggested retail price on a book, we're going to do that with insulin. And what we intend to do is to make our insulins available at, again, no more than $30. We actually think it could be less. No more than $30 a vial and no more than $55 for a flex pen, for a pack of those pens. But the reason why we're doing that is we want to very clearly signal to Catherine and others about what a fair price is. Now, we understand that when you're distributing drugs in retail pharmacies and online pharmacies, there has to be a markup for those companies to actually do their service. But what we're saying is that markup should be only around $8 to $10 instead of hundreds of dollars. And that's what we're saying and what we'll do. And because of that transparency, we hope to reset the market price. And so that's absolutely what we're determined to do. We intend that this effort actually makes it to people like Catherine so she can live a normal life as possible, given all the other burdens of her disease. But affordability shouldn't be one of them. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, Eli Lilly introduced a generic version of Humalog that, at least at the time, didn't really go anywhere. Months after it was introduced, you couldn't find it in a pharmacy in Utah, and that was a nationwide phenomenon. There was speculation that the PBMs had basically prevented it from being covered by most Americans' insurance plans, and it wasn't covered by most of them at that point. Are you worried that the same thing is going to crowd out whatever you're calling the generic version?
Yeah, very good. So there have been efforts by the existing manufacturers to bring forward less expensive insulins. The challenge is when you're making a more expensive insulin on the same production line as the less expensive insulin, what's in your interest to sell? Even those discounted insulins are extremely hard to find if you can find them at all. And they're not covered by insurance companies because what you don't see is all the rebates on the back end. And what we've done with Civica RX and Civica Script, if you notice in the news, dozens of health insurance companies like Select Health, over 20 Blue Cross plans around the country, have announced, Kaiser Permanente, have announced their participation in this project. We have 140 million people covered by payers who are willing and leaning in with us on this project. And that is going to help us do this. Now, the other thing we are going for, which is going to be a first with respect to fast-acting insulins like Humalog and Novolog, we are going for interchangeability with the FDA, meaning that when a doctor writes a script for a branded product and they show up at the pharmacy, we can the pharmacy at the pharmacy counter can substitute that for Civica insulin. So we are applying for straight up interchangeability with the FDA with these molecules, and we're confident, given the quality of our partner with Genesis, that we will obtain interchangeability for our insulins. Should we not have interchangeability, we still have 140 million people covered by a couple of dozen large payers who are willing to prioritize insulin on their formularies, Civica insulin on their formulary, and bring it to people like Catherine at the lowest possible price.
Are you concerned at all that the PBMs will retaliate against the insurers who agree with you and drag them away from the, I guess, collective?
Yeah, so we expect there to be a market response. But we hope the right market response as the price of insulin comes down. Civica is not, look, nobody owns us. We're not doing this except we only intervene where markets where there's a clear market failure and where patients are being hurt. And this is a clear example. Now that said, the contracts between the pharmacy benefit manager and half of the payers in the country, we don't think the pharmacy benefit managers or other people could block this from coming, especially with the advent of online pharmacies that allow us to actually directly deliver insulin to patients. And given how high, as Brandy said, the cost of a deductible is, if you can have the cost of insulin for a family, so she said she uses 6 flex pens, a 5-pack is $55 under Civica. You know, you're talking taking a cost from hundreds of dollars a month, that's after they've reached their deductible, to maybe around $100. And so when you layer in the deductible phase, we frankly think it's going to be very difficult for this game to be played with insulin going forward. How are you going to persuade a family to go and shell out thousands of dollars they can't afford for insulin to stay in benefit when they can go to an online pharmacy and get Civica insulin at a fair price? It will unstitch the rebate game for insulin, and that's exactly what we intend to do, so that the patients who are the ones paying the cost of those rebates actually get to pay a fair price up front.
Dan, this kind of sounds like a combination of a moral and a medical crusade.
Well, it is. For me, it's extremely personal. I'm a free market guy. I love markets when they work well. I think the strength of our society is because of our market approach. We get creative, we solve things. But when there's a market failure like this, that it's exploitive, that takes advantage of people who are already desperately trying to manage disease, it's wrong. And you know, this idea about Civica came to me when I was struggling through the issues related to EpiPen back in the day. And I was writing a column for the Deseret News every week, and I was bothered by this. And I remember I was at a gym, I was at the Vasa Fitness in Bountiful, Utah, on a treadmill, thinking, how do we fix this? And I just run for the U.S. Senate against Senator Hatch, and absolutely got destroyed in that race. And I didn't have a lot of optimism that the federal government was equipped to handle this. But when the idea came to actually do something different, to create a new market, and through a structure of a generic drug company, when that idea came, it felt like pure inspiration. I could see what Civica could do, and when I stepped off that treadmill, almost immediately came to mind my brothers and their struggles with insulin. So 5.5 years later, I'm pleased we're at this point. It'll be another couple of years, but this is a dream coming true for me personally. I'm the volunteer board chair. This is something I do because I feel motivated by it. But also it's an opportunity to bless the lives of tens of millions of people, not just the people like Catherine who struggle with diabetes and manic, but their families who feel that burden. So I'm after a societal return rather than a personal one, and it feels really good to be able to do this. I'm just so grateful for the hundreds of people who stood up and said, hey, let's do this with you. For the philanthropies who said, you know what, this is worth writing an 8-figure check to try to make this happen for people they'll never meet. I just love it. It gives me great hope that there are good people out there trying to do the right things, and I consider all these folks my friends now. So it's been really fun.
A question from our Facebook audience to Brandy. Brandy, in the diabetes community, are there people who are actually having to make choices between insulin, food security, living? Is this that impactful?
Absolutely, yeah. I heard from one family who does not turn on their heat unless inside their home it reaches 55 degrees. And they're living mostly off of canned food to be able to afford the insulin that the husband needs. We've got parents maxing out credit cards, taking on multiple jobs. The one example that I shared of the guy that's in graduate school and trying to afford all that, his dad is taking on a second job just to pay for his insulin.
So from your perspective, the impact is huge.
I don't even know if we can give words to the impact that this is going to have. Absolutely life-changing for the people who struggle to afford to stay alive.
Any other questions?
Brandy, could you please say, spell your name as
Oh,
well
sure.
as Catherine's name?
Yep,
for
I'm
us?
BRANDISTEWART and then KATHERINE.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that, like, we all can logically understand how if you have a product that you even bypass insurance altogether, it's gonna be a tenth of expensive as what you would get, like you guys are paying for insurance, that the cheaper one is naturally gonna do better. But it seems like, I mean, there are a lot of people on it, I mean, that's a big inventory. Like, how will Civica make it so I can go to, like, the Walgreens up there? We've got
Yeah.
a pantry of diabetics to serve. How is that going?
Yeah, so let me speak to that. So in our facility in Petersburg, Virginia, we will have enough production capacity to make a third of the required insulin for the U.S. And as needed, we can ramp up additional production lines in that facility. So we can cover a large portion of the market, and as needed, we can ramp up additional production capacity.
One facility can make a third of the insulin
Yeah.
used in the United States now?
Yep. So our production line, we can make about 80 million vials of insulin, and then right now 50 million pre-filled syringes, which with capacity to expand that more significantly. So, yep, we have the production capacity to do to make about a third of the U.S. insulin supply in that one facility.
You may have said this before, but when do you expect to start production?
2024.
Okay.
Yep, we are going through the clinical trial process, which is an abbreviated process, but one that requires to have your facility up and running because you actually have to test production lines in that facility. And so our timing is really good. We're going to be, that facility will come online right as we begin our testing for our FDA application.
Once everything's FDA approved and stuff, do you plan to start at 80 million vials?
We will make as much insulin as necessary to make sure that people can, get a fair price. We expect the market to respond. It should respond. The market should change. And we hope that the existing insulin manufacturers can figure out a way to participate in this market fairly as well.
And we have another question from our Facebook audience. Sheena says, I wish you could touch on the other health problems that occur if blood sugars are not maintained at a regular level, increasing other medical costs for people who have diabetes. Blood sugar management, insulin is a preventative issue for other illnesses that are so costly. So
Okay.
not so much necessarily a question, but an observation.
Well, look, diabetes is one of the most difficult and damaging of the chronic illnesses we suffer in this country and around the world. When your body doesn't process glucose, and insulin is required to emit sugar into your cells, your body starves. It cannibalizes itself, and people suffer and die. That's without insulin. Managing your blood sugar with insulin, and Catherine mentioned this about having to watch her blood sugar to make sure it doesn't get too high. When blood sugar is too high, you begin to develop heart disease, your increased risk of stroke. You have peripheral neuropathy, and you start to lose feeling in your extremities. Kidney failure and blindness are the other complications of diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes. And so when somebody rations insulin and their blood sugar goes up, they could easily end up in diabetic ketoacidosis, which requires hospitalization. And if it's not treated, people will die within days. But if the blood sugar is unmanaged over prolonged periods of time, it leads to the most horrendous consequences that you see in healthcare. Heart disease, strokes, amputations of limbs, blindness, and kidney failure. It runs the spectrum. So this is the most dangerous of diseases, and insulin is the medication that allows people to manage that disease and forestall these terrible complications, which, by the way, drive some of the highest costs in healthcare in our society. Those 5 conditions: heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, blindness, and peripheral neuropathy leading to amputation. Anything you'd add?
No, I mean, if blood sugar goes too low, every diabetic parent, their number one fear is their kid dying at night. It's a syndrome called dead in bed. And sometimes blood sugars will drop to a level and they don't wake up. And so every morning, you worry about that. You worry about your kid waking up. And then, like he said, if they go too high, you have all of that damage. She was 5. I thought she had a stomach flu. We have no history of diabetes on either side of our family. And so I didn't know the warning signs. She had all of them, but I didn't know.
How has the monthly cost changed in the past 11 years? Like, what's been the range that you've had to deal with post-deduction?
Oh gosh, I know, and I don't have all of that.
I know this is.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So, and there have been, like the Insulin Affordability Act that was passed, and that has made a difference, for sure, absolutely. That made a big difference in what we were paying after insurance. But you have people with different insurance plans or with no insurance, But for us, yes, we did see, we were paying less out of pocket once that took effect.
I was interested if that
Yeah.
would make a difference.
No, it did,
Like,
for
I
sure.
know that what self-funded plans aren't, it doesn't matter, but most people I think.
Yeah.
The majority of people. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Any more questions? Sure. Well, thank you to Catherine and Brandy and Dan for being here today to share this information. For those of you that are here, we'll complete this now, but if you'd like to talk one-on-one with them, they're available too. So thank you for joining us.
You totally killed that. Like, he was like a public speaker.
Thank you.
Well done.
Student council in 6th grade.
Thank you.
Ken.